Hello everyone, and welcome to the OCLO Guides Series. This video is dedicated to the Litigator, and we will be going over this manager's stats, attacks, cheats, and synergy buffs. And after we have all of the mechanics explained, we will be reviewing and applying everything that we have learned through a 4-man OCLO footage. Alright, so let us begin with the Litigator's stats. The Litigator starts off the battle with 4,250 health points. His cog defense stat, which is thrown into the accuracy formula, has a value of 75. This defense value is equivalent to that of any regular level 14 or higher executive cog. And the damage range from regular attacks, which we'll call strength, goes from 36 to 48. And lastly, the Litigator has a permanent status effect called Lure Resistance throughout the entire round. This status effect causes all lures to be effective for a maximum of 2 rounds. Shortly in this clip, we will see Lure Resistance take effect on the Hypno Goggles used by Ugly Slippy. Let's move on to the regular attacks of the Litigator. The Litigator has a total of 5 regular attacks. Seen in this clip is Evil Eye, which deals 0 damage. Just kidding, I found a clip where it does 36 damage. Power Trip is a group attack that does 38 damage. Robook does 40 damage.
Get bumped by knowledge, Toon.
Chomp does 43 damage. Finally, Fired is the Gator's most powerful attack, which deals 48 damage. On to the cheat mechanics. We will be going over what activates the cheat mechanic and what it does. The Litigator's first cheat is called Snap. This cheat activates in 2 different conditions. The first condition's description is shown right under the attack name in game, and it states, "The Litigator retaliates against the most dangerous toon." Unfortunately, the description is very vague. So, how does the Litigator determine the most dangerous toon? Well, every 3 rounds, which is when the cheat triggers, the Litigator keeps track of the total damage dealt by each toon. Damage dealt includes only base damage. Knockback and combo damages are not accounted for. When a cog is fired, that cog's total HP is accounted for the toon that fired it. As for the second condition, the Litigator retaliates when soaked. Although it sounds very simple, there's more to it than meets the eye. If you look at the Litigator head model on the top right, you'll notice that there's a fire on his head. That fire is extinguished when he's soaked, and remains extinguished until he is no longer soaked. With this information, a little tip that I can give right away here is, if you re-soak the Litigator before he unsoaks, he will not retaliate. Therefore, he only retaliates when you extinguish the fire on his head. And those were the 2 conditions that trigger the Snap cheat. But what does it do? The Snap cheat has 2 effects. It will deal some damage, and it will render the toon vulnerable for 2 rounds. And that toon will take more damage when vulnerable. The values of the damage and vulnerability are dependent on the trigger condition. If the trigger condition is retaliate against most dangerous toon, then Snap deals 30 damage and renders the toon 20% vulnerable. If the trigger condition is retaliate when soaked, then Snap deals half of what it does when it retaliates against most dangerous toon, which is 15 damage and 10% vulnerability. Before moving on to the next cheat, I must explain the ability queue mechanic. If a cheat cannot be used for whatever reason, it will be queued to the next round or later during the round. For example, in this clip, we see the cogs being lured on turn 3, which is when the snap sheet is supposed to trigger. But because the litigator was lured, he was prevented from using his ability, therefore queuing it to the next round. The queue causes some edge cases with how the most dangerous tune is determined, and that edge case is, if the snap ability was queued, we compare only the damage during the turn it triggers on. So here we have a clip showing that the tune on the far left will be the tune targeted as the most dangerous tune, because snap was queued, and that tune dealt the most damage in this round. On the screen we have everything there is to know about the snap sheet. Too many words here, so let's just throw them all away and play one of the test runs I conducted and put the snap sheet into action. Enjoy! Psst, hey, you there. If you already know how snap works and don't want to watch through this, skip over to the next section at 10 minutes and 29 seconds. As we can see here, the tune on the far right deals the most damage, and is locked on as Snap's next target, for now. And it is now turn 3, the turn in which Snap is supposed to trigger. However, the tunes used lure, therefore queuing the ability to the next turn and resetting all of the damage. What this means is that Snap will be triggering on turn 4, and on that turn, the tune on the far left deals the most damage, making him the absolute target for that cycle.
Thank you very much.
The litigator completes his first snap cycle, resets the damage, and moves on to the next. Since he used snap on turn 4, it is not accounted for in that cycle. Only turns 5 and 6 will be accounted for.
Thank you very much.
I forgot to mention that damage dealt to all cogs is accounted for. As you can see here, the brown cat thing uses an AoE gag. and the total damage from it is greater than the save that the pink cat thing uses, which causes the litigator to target the brown cat thing.
Thank you very much.
And that is all you need to know for the snap cheat. Moving on, Bayou Bash and Bayou Bellow. Bayou Bash and Bayou Bellow are the most difficult cheats to understand and explain, so bear with me. We will start off with the cheat's effects first, then tackle the conditions. Bayou Bash has a sequence of effects casted in the exact same order listed here. When the litigator bashes for the first time, he will simply fill the battle. When the litigator bashes for the second time, he will increase the battle capacity by 1 and fill the battle again. You can see this effect in action here, where the battle capacity is increased from 4 to 5. When the litigator is sus, bad joke, my fault. When the litigator bashes for the third time, he will increase the battle capacity again and fill the battle again, which puts the capacity at its maximum of 6 cogs on the field. Any Bayou Bash from that point forth will simply fill the battle. Whoa, that was a lot for just one cheat. I sure hope Bayou Bellow isn't that complicated. Well, it isn't. It is exactly what the description itself states. It removes all negative effects from cogs. Negative effects include lures, soaks, soos, damage downs, and any other negative effect that you can think of. So in this clip, the litigator unsoaks himself and unsoos the 2 cogs in positions 2 and 3 from the left. We have the effects jotted down, but everything else missing makes this look a little funny. But that will be fixed soon, since we're about to cover the triggers and the conditions for this cheat. The way I personally look at this whole Bayou cheat is that it is one singular cheat that has 2 variations based on certain conditions. With that being said, we will first look at this cheat's most important trigger, the 4-turn cycle trigger, which is similar to Snap's 3-turn cycle trigger. The major difference is that the Bayou cheat will trigger on turn 1, and from that point forth, it is expected to trigger every 4 turns without any external forces. I'll explain the whole external forces thing later, but for now, let us agree that the Bayou cheat will trigger on turns 1, 5, 9, 13, and so on. It will trigger on turn 1, and then trigger again every 4 turns. The counter at the bottom displays the turn number for the clip that we're seeing here, and from here we see that on turn 5, the litigator does his second Bayou Bash. So, what are the conditions for the bash variation of the Bayou cheat? We will be looking at the conditions that allow it and the conditions that prevent it. Bayou Bash will trigger when the battle is not full, so as we can see here, the litigator uses Bayou Bash to fill the battle. And looking at it the other way around, Bayou Bash cannot trigger when the battle is full. And it also cannot be triggered more than once in the same turn. But why do we care about when a bash cannot be triggered? Well, it is quite simple. Bellow is triggered whenever bash cannot be triggered. So, what did I mean when I said external forces? Well, this cheat's turn cooldown can be accelerated, which is why sometimes we see him use Bayou Bash back to back, or even Bash and Bellow on the same turn. Here I will explain and demonstrate how the litigator's HP is a major factor that controls the turn cooldown cycle. For every 500 health points deducted from the litigator, the turn cooldown is decreased by 1. His HP is one of the external forces that manipulates this ability. In this clip, we force the litigator to use Bayou Bellow on turn 2. The reason that happens is because the cheat from turn 1 was queued to turn 2, due to the lure. and the cheat from turn 5 was accelerated to turn 2. On this turn, the Litigator received over 1,500 damage, which shifted the cycle by 3. With all of the information put together, we see that the Litigator is going to cast the cheat twice on turn 2. The first cast will be Bayou Bash, and the second cast will be Bayou Bellow, because as mentioned before, the Litigator cannot bash twice in the same turn. Yeehaw! We are now done with the cheats part of the video. Oh boy, what's coming next? Synergy buffs. Since there are 3 other managers, there are a total of 3 synergy buffs. When the Litigator is paired with the Stenographer, the snap that retaliates against the most dangerous toon inflicts a 40% vulnerability instead of the normal 20%. When the Litigator is paired with the Case Manager, Bayou Bash summons cogs flying in with an insurance plan attached to them. More about the insurance plan cheat will be discussed in the Case Manager's video though. When the Litigator is paired with the Scapegoat, the Litigator uses Bayou Bellow when there are only 5 cogs in the field instead of 6.
No!
Absolutely not. That is not the reason we see the Litigator use Bayou Bellow. Before I explain why though, I must introduce the Scapegoat's 2 modes here, Enraged mode and Shield mode. During the turn in which the Scapegoat transitions from the Enraged mode to the Shield mode, the Litigator is given an extra cast. Let us rewind this clip and observe what happens when the Scapegoat switches from the Enraged mode to the Shield mode. The ability that we are seeing getting queued here is the Bayou Bash that was supposed to trigger on turn 4. And the ability that is getting queued here is the extra Bayou cast caused from the Goat switching from Enraged to Shield mode. So if the Litigator was not lured during that turn, in which he queued the abilities, then he would have used Bayou Bash and Bayou Bellow on the same turn. The first Bayou Bash is normal, but the second one was converted to Bayou Bellow because the Litigator cannot bash twice on the same turn, not because there were 5 cogs. Firing a cog, as some would suggest in this kind of situation, is not going to save you from the Bellow that will occur. And that is it for Bayou Bash and Bayou Bellow. Soon I will put up a full Gator Goat combo video and analyze the run fully the same way I did with Snap earlier, so you guys can see the explanation in action. A lot of interesting things happened in this 4-man OCLO run, and hopefully this analysis helps you understand exactly how the Litigator works. The battle starts off with the Stenographer dying and the Litigator flying into the battle, accompanying the Scapegoat and 2 other cogs. We see that the battle is full, but with a capacity of 4. So what will happen on turn 1? Well, we know that the Litigator will always use Bayou Bash on his first cast. Therefore, he will try to fill the battle. But the battle's already full. So, literally nothing happens. While we watch this round play out, Let us quickly go over all the attributes we see on the right side. On the top right, we have the snap cheat stats, in which we track every toon's damage and the litigator's snap target in real time. Right below it, we have the Bayou cheat stats, in which we track the damage dealt on the litigator, the turn in which the next B or Bayou occurs. We also track whenever the cheat gets queued, and whenever the litigator receives an extra cast from the scapegoat. As for the cooldown, we can see that there's a relationship between next Bayou, the cooldown, and the turn number. Next Bayou minus cooldown should always give you the turn number. And lastly, for visualization purposes, the entire cycle is being tracked as well. Every time the toons finish picking their gags, the turn commences. The attributes that change at that point are the turn number, the snap damages, the snap target, the damage dealt on the litigator, the cooldown, which goes down by 1 every turn, the next Bayou, and the cycle, whenever a 500 HP threshold is broken. The snap stats are self-explanatory at this point, so let us pay attention to the Bayou stats. Notice that the cooldown will decrease from 2 to -1. That is because the cooldown decreased by 1, as it should every turn, and the litigator received enough damage to accelerate the cycle by 2 turns. So with 2 shifts to the cycle, we see that there's a net decrease of 3 turns on the cooldown. 2 minus 3 is -1. And once the cooldown reaches 0 or lower, the litigator will cast a Bayou cheat. In this situation, he will cast Bayou Bash to increase the capacity to 5 and fill the battle. With every cast that is triggered through the cooldown system, next B will go up by 4, and so will the cooldown. The toons are about to deal some really heavy damage with the clock piano, which will cause 3 shifts in the cycle. This will force the litigator to use Bayou Bash on this turn, and with the goat shielding up on this turn, an extra Bayou cast is given to the litigator, which is converted into a Bayou Bellow, because the litigator is already using Bayou Bash through the cooldown system. From this point forth, the litigator will not be damaged. Therefore, the cycle will remain at 3, 7, 11, 15, and the damage dealt will stay at 3,489. If you notice, the next cycle shift happens really close, and that is at around, or I mean exactly, 3,500 HP damage dealt. A really important factor to notice here is that there are 6 cogs on the field. However, because the litigator was not destined to use his Bayou cheat on this turn, he does not use Bellow. That's really all I have to say for now. I feel like I've gone through a majority of the things that need to be discussed, and the remainder of this video is simply going to be stat tracking and analysis, and that is it. You can continue watching, or you stop watching, because I feel like at this point I've explained everything. But if you want to keep watching and see patterns or anything that you can find from the stats on the right, then by all means go ahead. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments section below. If you made it this far, then congrats, you're about to see a pretty funny edge case that happens when a cog dies, or actually a manager dies, the litigator bashes on that turn, and another manager flies in. Basically, the litigator uses bash, and the case manager is the cog that's flying in. Not any other cog, because the battle is full. A pretty interesting case here. No pun intended. But yeah. But let's not forget about the Bayou bash that happened, and speed this up and see what happens 6 turns later.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo.
So we noticed that for the entirety of the time there were 6 cogs on the field, but as soon as the case manager dies, the litigator does not use Bayou bash, but a cog comes flying in anyways. And my theory is that that is the cog that should have come flying in when the litigator used Bayou bash, but the case manager took its spot. If you made it this far into the video, please let me know what you think could have happened with this stray cog flying in out of nowhere. And that is it for this video. The next chapter will be covering the stenographer. Peace!